We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back here on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, and we have back with us long-time host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner, Liberty Nation senior political analyst. Now, in the early part of the show, we were talking about how the media bell is tolling for Joe Biden, but now I want to get really into the get into the weeds on this in a good way, Tim, if we may, on the state of play for the 2024 election. Now, before we started recording, Tim, really, we kind of veered off into a few different subjects, and it was really a question of what should we keep in what should we keep out rather than what should we keep in, because it's such a huge topic. So I thought maybe I'd give you a free rein here, Tim. What is the most fun, notable, entertaining, captivating, any other adjective you care to throw in there, aspect of the 2024 election for you today?
Maybe perhaps the fact that the media, which has so regretted the fact that they gave Donald Trump all that free media, billions of free media in 2016, they believe they contributed to his election victory, and they've been backpedaling ever since. But now, since this is not really a campaign for votes, it's a campaign for judges and prosecutors who are attempting to decide the election. Now, even though people like Rachel Maddow and other members of the hard left media don't want to give Trump any extra exposure, they have to, because he is filing one motion after another in one court case after another, making statements on courthouse steps one after another. So they're forced to cover him. And every time they do, Mark, I think people are reminded of the fact that for all his bombast and all the liabilities that he's shown over the years, he is being politically persecuted. And I think that's pretty obvious to anyone watching, even the people that aren't inclined to like him. So I think it's amusing that the Democrats wanted to face Donald Trump again in the worst way because they were sure they could beat him again. They beat him once. They were telling themselves they can certainly beat him again. They weren't sure they could beat any other Republican, so they put their foot on the gas, used lawfare to sort of force Republicans to back Trump. And so now they did. Now he's going to be the nominee, and now he is leading in the race, and they are scrambling, and they're desperate because their own strategy has backfired on them. And I will say this. I do believe we've reached the point where the only one who can beat Donald Trump at this point is Donald Trump himself.
Yes, he really is. He's his own worst enemy in many ways. But yeah, I like the point you made there about how he sort of captivated the media attention, because one motion after another, all the court cases, he has to be in the headlines. And I've done a few pieces on the pages of libertynation.com where I examine what kind of coverage that Donald Trump has versus Joe Biden, even before Donald Trump became the presumptive nominee, even before the primaries really kicked off. And he was just a dominant force. It was 2-1 at the very least on pretty much every left-leaning media outlet that he was getting the coverage. It's not so much that he's captivated the media. He's taken the camera and he's holding it right in front of his face, telling the nation that this is happening to me, it can happen to you. And I think that's a lot more powerful than we'll try and build the wall, we'll try and drain the swamp. I think
it's one of the biggest backfires of all time, because it seems to me if they'd left Trump alone, hadn't sued him in 4 different venues, tried to throw him into prison, tried to bankrupt him, they've done it all. They might be well ahead now.
Yeah.
Because they've managed to do something that would seem impossible after January 6, 2021. They've turned Trump into a sympathetic figure.
Mm.
That's pretty hard to do, but the Democrats have managed to do it.
They really have. It's as you say, it's might go down as one of the biggest backfires in political history. Now let's talk about the state of the race briefly, Tim. So the latest numbers, I think it's nationally, you did allude to this earlier in the show. I think nationally, Donald Trump's ahead by 2 points, which is you've made this point time and time again, Tim. In 2016, 2020, he was never ahead by 2 points nationally.
He
Um,
was never ahead at all.
yeah. Uh,
He was never ahead in the popular vote in the entirety of the 2016 and 2020 elections. Now he's ahead by almost 2 points. So you can do the math,
yeah.
especially since, look, both of those elections were decided. 16 and 20 were like mirror images,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The five states that Trump won in 2016 narrowly, he lost narrowly in 2020.
Well,
And
that's
there's
what I want to get into quickly, Tim, is those states, those swing states, those all important battleground arenas, because the the national polling doesn't actually matter so much because California might have all of these electoral college votes, but they're all going to the Democrat candidate, whoever that happens to be. It's just the battlegrounds that matter, and the polling there shows, well, it's almost overwhelming for Donald Trump, isn't it?
Well, let's put it this way. He is ahead close to or outside the margin of error in Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, and Michigan. Those are the big five.
That's the
And
electoral
he's
college
and
win right
he's
there.
that's it. That's
Mm.
all he needs. That's more than he needs. But he's also ahead in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, albeit narrowly. So the bottom line is that Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden in every single battleground state. I mean, and that those numbers, by the way, as you and I often discuss, those numbers get even worse for Joe Biden
Mm.
when you factor in Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who stands a good chance of getting into double digits. And then you factor in left wing candidates Jill Stein and Cornel West, who will take votes only away from Biden. And the outlook, I mean, frankly, the outlook is grim for Joe Biden, which is why I say I think only Donald Trump
Mm.
can beat himself at this point.
It's very good. There's a 7.5 month gap in which Donald Trump can start letting out the rope with which to hang his campaign. And
Yes, that's
so,
right.
so yeah, I think you're right that he's really the only one that can beat him. One final question for you, Tim. Do you think that there will be much movement in these polls if Donald Trump is convicted of one or more crimes?
I think there will be some. I think it's unavoidable for there to be some impact. I think the one that people will pay attention to are the federal charges related to the so-called insurrection. That's the one that I think people most know and have opinions about. Uh, but I think in totality, it's not going to be enough to turn around the current trends in the election because January 6th is the most well chronicled event of the 21st century, and everybody has already baked in their own opinion on it, it
Mm.
seems to me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anybody who's really not voting for Donald Trump because of January 6th are not responding to these polls saying that they're voting for Donald Trump. That's a fascinating point. Tim Donner, thank you ever so much for being here. Really appreciate you. See you soon.
Look forward to it, Mark. Thanks so much.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.